Hey there, guys. Welcome to the channel. So, we all know it, and I've always thought that CNN, they're not exactly the gold standard for unbiased journalism. And, just a little while ago, they had an extra sneaky moment where they seemed to be hiding real facts from their poor, unassuming, very, very mushy-brained viewers. And it was just a few days before the Republican presidential debate. And the candidate was Vivek Ramaswamy. And he saw firsthand, how these liberal propagandists, how they like to preload their questions. They're trying only to get the response that they want. They're not interested in finding actual truth or finding out what the person being interviewed actually thinks. So, and poor Caitlyn Collins, man, she's having a tough time and tough run lately. So she oversimplified Vivek's strategy on stopping a potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan, which of course is most likely going to happen, probably before he even has a chance to do anything about it. But anyway, I'm honestly surprised that they keep trying this guy on. Vivek is a very, very sharp guy. And why they keep poking this bear, I have no idea. Without a doubt, smarter than most anyone that's had to interview him. But anyway, so his response to her on this topic, it definitely left CNN scratching their heads and trying to explain in real time to their viewers what exactly just happened. It's pretty cool stuff to witness. Take a look.
One thing that you will likely be asked about on Wednesday night is foreign policy. And you recently said that to protect Taiwan, you would do this.
Guess what? We'll put a gun in every Taiwanese household, train them how to use it. That is how you make Xi Jinping think twice.
Do you really think that would be a sufficient plan to deter a Chinese invasion if it includes long-range missiles, ground troops, an aerial blockade, a naval blockade?
Caitlyn.
All of the different measures here?
Caitlyn, of course it's not sufficient. You take that tiny little clip when I've articulated at the Nixon Library last week, a 1-hour speech with a whole range of deterrents. That is part of it. But I've also said that I would pull Russia out of its military alliance with China. I've also said that we would bolster our partnership with India to be able to close the Andaman Sea and the Malacca Strait. I've also said that we would actually send a signal very clearly that we will defend Taiwan, moving from strategic ambiguity to strategic clarity to say that we will defend Taiwan until we have semiconductor independence in this country. And so, yes, part of this is turning Taiwan into a porcupine. I think exporting our Second Amendment is a relatively free or low-cost way to do that. But I find it laughable that you will take that clip and then put words into my mouth as though that was a sufficient deterrent. Caitlyn, with due respect, that's a joke, especially when I've offered as expansive of a deterrent strategy as I have.
It's not putting words into your mouth, and it's not saying that you didn't say those other things. It's just saying that you did say that part of your effort when it comes to Taiwan
I never said
giving...
it was sufficient.
It's pretty wild to see how CNN's producers might have felt when Vivek actually highlighted their blatant attempt to misrepresent his very detailed policy live on the air. It's not often we see the media looking as uncomfortable as they did during the Trump era. But that is what we get every time Vivek goes on one of these shows anymore. So essentially, CNN tried to paint him with the same tired old stereotypical brush that they always use on Republican candidates. And then, they used this tactic, made it look like Vivek is oversimplifying a very complex situation, hoping that he'd trip up and just look foolish. But here's the kicker. Collins' insinuation that Vivek's plan was just about giving Taiwan its own version of the Second Amendment and NRA as the main deterrent against Chinese invasion was a pretty convenient narrative for those who have a predetermined blanket view of Republicans. So obviously Vivek was having none of that. It's almost comedic. It was comedic to watch him just casually brush off her attempts, even encouraging their viewers to check out his detailed policy speech from the Nixon Library themselves just a week before. Ultra smooth stuff that you got to see. But before we do, guys, thanks so much to everyone that's been subscribing and leaving such great comments. We really, really appreciate the support. And if you haven't done it already, guys, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. Every time you do, a leftist loses their wings. Take a look.
This is really funny, Caitlyn. It's been very educational for me to learn how media works. Yes, that is important. No one ever said that was sufficient to deter an invasion. From India to Russia to what I've said we would do with moving Ohio-class SSGNs to the South China Sea and to the Indo-Pacific. This is the stuff of actual deterrence and also strategic clarity that we would actually defend Taiwan. Yes, I do think I am the president who best knows how to deter China from going after Taiwan before we've achieved semiconductor independence, which is the most important foreign policy accomplishment the next U.S. president can deliver. And I gave a specific speech at the Nixon Library. In a big part, actually moving Russia out of China's alliance. But you also said that you would open up an NRA bureau in Taiwan. Is the reverse of what Nixon would have done.
I mean, you also talked about...
Yes,
I just think
yes,
when you listen to plans
strategy
to deter China, it typically focuses on radar systems and missiles that they need, not necessarily AR-15s.
Caitlyn, you might be able to do this trick better with other candidates who don't really know how to respond to the game.
It's not a trick. I'm just simply asking what your plan is with Taiwan and following up on something you suggested.
What I have said countless times is strategic partnership with India to close the Malacca Strait if necessary. That's where China gets its Middle Eastern oil supplies. The number one thing to do, I've said, is end the war in Ukraine by pulling apart the Russia-China alliance. Xi Jinping's calculus right now is that if the U.S. actually is in dual conflict with Russia and China, then that makes it easier for China to go after Taiwan. So I say disband that alliance. I also think that we should, and I've said this many times, we should take one of the destroyers that are in Japan, run one a week through the Taiwan Strait until we've achieved semiconductor independence. Move to two Ohio-class SSGNs loaded with 100-plus Tomahawks apiece to the South China Sea and to the Indian Ocean. This is part of a comprehensive strategy that I've articulated in multiple places. But as part of that, I do think there's a reason why China does not have a Second Amendment. China is deathly afraid of a Second Amendment in its own country. And so making that an export to Taiwan is part of what many military experts call the porcupine strategy, which I do subscribe to and believe in. But I will not allow someone to put words in my mouth to say that I ever said that was sufficient. It is not.
So it's fascinating seeing how CNN's attempt to paint a certain narrative, it just falls apart the moment that Vivek begins explaining his actual views. Personally, I'm impressed by the guy. He's got a deep knowledge of military equipment, deep knowledge of defense strategies. When he started talking about the porcupine strategy for Taiwan and the emphasis of the U.S. exerting our influence over the Malacca Strait, which is essentially the underbelly of Chinese energy supply, it shows that he knows what he's talking about. And let's be real, Caitlyn Collins likely had zero freaking clue what he was even talking about. And from there, things got even more entertaining and obviously bizarre. When several left-leaning outlets accused Vivek of mansplaining to Caitlyn Collins. And seriously, dude, since when did clarifying your policy position to a journalist, regardless of their gender, become mansplaining? And of course, Vivek jumps on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it now, and he made it clear that he holds every journalist, regardless of gender, to the same standard of truthfulness, which we all should. And he proved it by referencing his past interaction with Don Lemon, which, of course, if you're not familiar with that, was absolutely epic. But anyway, so now the heart of the thing. Let's take a closer look at what Vivek actually said in his address at the Nixon Library. And it is worth wondering, obviously, how many of CNN's audience, or even these anchors, took the time to actually understand what his policies are before commenting on them. And he's got overarching strategy from Ukraine to Taiwan. And really the aim for him, and for all of us really, should be to disrupt the Russia-China alliance, an alliance that is taking shape in full steam and real time without any mention from our mainstream press, without any mention from our president, which is literally insane. So it's refreshing, it's thought-provoking to hear it from Vivek, especially when you consider how many politicians from both sides of the aisle, they're not discussing anything important when it comes to the strategies for America's global role.
This is how we think about deterrence of China. Bolster our relationship with allies who share our interest in deterring Taiwan while pulling Russia out of China's hands. I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment here at home. Let's turn our Second Amendment into an export. That's what American exceptionalism is about. Leave it to Taiwan to adopt a Second Amendment of its own. Put a gun in every Taiwanese household. Train them how to use it. That's how you turn Taiwan into a porcupine. This is how you deter China. But why is it in our interest then to deter China from going after Taiwan if we're not doing the same with respect to Russia and Ukraine? The answer is it comes back down to American self-interest. Taiwan is responsible for the leading-edge semiconductors that power our modern, technologically facilitated lifestyle. Probably these lights that are shining in my face, the phones in our pockets, the computers that we type up our notes on, those cameras that are recording me in the back, these are powered by leading-edge semiconductors that come from this tiny island nation off the southeast coast of China. I think it's regrettable that we got to a place where our modern way of life depends on that island nation, but that remains a fact. Which is why I've said that we will move from our, I believe, inexplicable posture of strategic ambiguity with respect to Taiwan in my first year to a position of strategic clarity, where I will be clear with China and with Taiwan.
And to me, man, it's impressive to see he's got a comprehensive approach to global politics. You know, his understanding, it really does appear to be both nuanced and actually grounded in reality, something that can be accomplished. You know, when he discusses Taiwan, you know, he doesn't miss the critical fact that U.S., we depend on them for semiconductors and many other things. Similarly, you know, when he talks about Ukraine, he recognizes, you know, the significance of the war, but also points out that it may not serve American interests to push it into NATO. You know, especially if it ruffles feathers with China, ruffles feathers with Russia. You know, it shows the guy's got depth. And the fact that he really will say what he believes, even when others might not understand it or be ready to hear it. You know, CNN's portrayal of this, you know, it's almost as fake and superficial as anything they've ever done. But, you know, instead of dissecting Vivek's actual policies and explaining to their viewers why they're wrong or misguided, they just opted to oversimplify it and try to make him look like a dummy. I don't know. You know, maybe they really don't think that their audience can handle it. And maybe they can't. I don't know. But here's the twist I did not see coming. The Young Turks, obviously very, very left-leaning, you know, they're pointing out CNN looking like fools, you know, and it was surprising yet very, very satisfying watching Anna Kasparian of TYT criticize CNN. Full disclosure, as far as leftists go, I really, really like and respect that woman. And it goes to show that sometimes, you know, media outlets can put aside their biases to recognize and challenge something that truly is ridiculous, you know, regardless of which side of the political spectrum they're on.
So I went into his full speech at the Nixon Library, and he's actually telling the truth, hyper-focusing on what to me was more of like a throwaway statement or something to kind of like attract potentially campaign donations from the NRA. It's just not it's not really a good representation of something more comprehensive that he shared during that speech about his foreign policy.
So it really is a special moment when TYT, which really does embody the left, the very, very left, you know, takes time to turn their fire on the mainstream media outlet, someone like CNN. You know, it's almost like an internal check within the left spectrum, almost like they're saying, come on, guys, you know, you have to at least pretend to be serious people, or people are going to stop taking any of our craziness seriously. You know, I guess, you know, this whole situation, it's going to have a dual effect. You know, first, it casts further doubt over CNN's credibility, as if that's possible, you know, especially if for the few people that were already skeptical and already still don't know what's going on. And second, you know, things like this can actually unintentionally serve as an endorsement for someone like Vivek. You know, when a candidate's views are misrepresented, and then that misrepresentation is called out by other media outlets, especially ones that are trusted, you know, it makes the candidate actually appear more genuine, more grounded, and more of a winner. And a winner always appeals to a much broader audience. Anyway, guys, that's just my take. Let me know yours in the comments. And if you haven't already, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. We'll see you in the next one.